Hello there, welcome to the Trews. Nigel Farage has been on Loose Women. Ugh!
Now, some people think our next guest speaks total and utter sense, while others think he talks total balderdash.
He's always in that mood, isn't he, Nigel Farage? Sort of looking around a bit, like he's sort of on a swivelling trampoline thing. He's always sort of a bit jolly. It got to its absolute peak when he was in that golden Wonka lift with Trumpkin. But basically, that's the mood he's always in.
Only this weekend, he made possibly his most divisive comment yet, that the UK should follow new American President Donald Trump's lead and introduce extreme vetting of immigrants at our borders.
Now listen, I don't know how you've gotten here, but I'm looking at your markings. You've not been extremely vetted, have you?
Do you like being called controversial?
I can't see why it's controversial to say we should protect our borders and do everything we can to stop terrorists getting into Britain. That's not controversial. That's what everyone thinks.
Borders. But there's some terms that need to be questioned. One is Britain. What is Britain? Don't be an idiot, mate. You know what Britain is. Yeah, I suppose I do. It's that land mass that we call Britain. But by saying Britain, you assume that there is a place called Britain wherein the people inside it all have the same agenda and objectives, and there are no subdivisions within those people based on economic privilege, on class, on intention, on history. In a way, Britain is a belief. We all decide that there is a thing called Britain. No, mate, there is a thing called Britain. I'm living in it. I don't know who this person is that's taking out the other side of the argument.
Let's get this right, and I have to say, the BBC have been pushing out ban, ban, ban. It's not a ban, it's a 90-day suspension whilst he puts into place proper vetting measures.
He does make things sound kind of reasonable, Nigel Farage, and I think whatever your opinion of him is, you have to agree that this is a person who presents himself better in the modern media age than a lot of the political voices that we're used to. Sort of, I think after Tony Blair, a kind of a general mistrust of politicians started to reach a kind of peak. I think because we were all so behind him in the things can only get better era, and then he proved to be sort of that Iraq bombing, tricky, big business appeasing, Labour deconstructing swine has made us sort of very untrusting, and it sort of leads to these figures that seem like, well, look, that's just the way it is, or yeah, you can trust me. Those people now seem more sort of reasonable and relevant.
What really upsets me is when we talk about Muslims, the word terrorist comes straight together. And I've got a child at school who's coming home going, Mum, why don't people like Muslims in this country? I'd just like you to ask, how would you feel if somebody in your name went and carried out an attack on a Muslim person because of what you'd said and how they'd interpreted what you'd said?
I could throw that,
how would you feel?
I could throw that back at you.
How would you feel?
How would you feel if Muslims listening to an extremist preacher planted a bomb on the London Tube? How would you feel?
Well, but
look, it does cut both ways, but perhaps one thing that's not often included in that cut is that Western economic interests have been pursued to such an extreme for such a long time in the region of the world that is predominantly Muslim that it's difficult to judge the true impact of that activity. Also, a lot of these systems of categories that this woman here, Sarah, and Nigel Farage are debating are themselves difficult categories to define. Ever since the CIA funded and trained the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 70s, there is no independent Islamic militancy. The Islamic militancy has a relationship with American foreign politics, a direct financial and ideological relationship when the Mujahideen's goals were anti-Soviet Union. So from that point, and literally Osama bin Laden was one of the people that was trained, there has been a coalescent narrative. Those two things have been interwoven and acting together. American foreign policy in the Middle East from that time to this one has meant that there is an integrated relationship. So to at this point go, there's this thing where Muslims are being inspired by hate preachers, that's arbitrary and irrelevant. No, they have been inspired by history, they've been just inspired by economics, they've been inspired by politics and continuing oppression. These stories are complex to tell, difficult to tell, so they don't get told. Easier to just go ban people from these countries, ban people that are this religion. It's an easier way of categorising it. Very difficult to get that kind of subject matter on Loose Women.
But I'm asked that question all the time, and I disagree with them, and I say it's wrong.
I have never ever said anything
worthwhile.
You've made the point about your child, which is why the more we control our borders, the tougher we are on terrorism, the better harmony between all of us is going to be.
What we know is these measures won't work. They ultimately won't work. The people that are banning Muslims from those 7 countries, Nigel Farage saying these things, they know it's not going to be effective because these problems are not caused by small, disparate, diffuse groups of people. They're caused by powerful global institutions. Not solely caused by them, but because they are powerful, they have greater ability to affect change. Obviously, great big transnational energy companies and financial entities have more ability to affect change than disparate cells of terrorists from wherever with whatever agenda and whatever objective, and we've shown you how diverse the figures are when it comes to the impact of terrorism and how many sources they're drawn from. But ultimately the narrative of the global struggle for power isn't controlled by the people with no power, it's controlled by the powerful. So if you want change, those are the people that you have to influence. That is where change has to happen. And that means regulation, control of trade, control of energy. Those are not policies or arguments that you will hear on Loose Women either. But until those arguments are addressed, you will not see change. You can't control people by controlling borders. You have to control the powerful. That's some true news. Subscribe here if you like.
Is a tool that is abused to fool you and to leave you scared and confused. Trews is like the news. If the news was true, I want some Trews. Let's have some Trews.